Hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today. I'm just doing a follow up from the order for school resource officers slash police officers here. Um, I had another side of the coin that I had pulled up, but I got distracted. And here we were 40 minutes in or whatever. So this we're going to go through a past series of articles from the Wisconsin Examiner. I think that's fair to say it's a left leaning publication, and we'll see what they have to say on this subject. I think there's some things here that are particularly fascinating that we should just take a look at, and also with the news of Milwaukee Public Schools. All right, so, and this is the Wisconsin Examiner, and let's go to about, because that's always helpful. Apparently, we're done with the internet these days. Um, all right. Apparently, we don't get to find out what's up with that. That's really weird. What internet outage? All right, so we're at about here. Nonpartisan, nonprofit news site offering fresh perspective. Take our inspiration from the motto, state capital, the will of the people is the law of the land. I prefer the Vox Populi, Vox Dei, but we're all on the same page, I think, with that. Um, Please email Ruth Conniff or Eric Gunn. That's pretty good indication that this is a left-leaning paper. And then I think if we were to go to, let's see what this is. Uh, Bam. Okay. I think that tells us what we need to know in terms of what their stance is, because they put it right on there. Good for them. All right. Now, here we are. I need a less clicky mouse. Let's put that on the list here. Leaders plan for police officers to return to Milwaukee Public Schools. September 9th, 2024, by Baylor Spears. Good for you, a Tennessee native. Jeez Louise. All right. Well, some say district should take its time. I mean, people can be from anywhere if they want to be, but we would assume that our Wisconsin, Milwaukee, I mean, don't we have our own? I mean, gee, can't we? All right. Milwaukee Public Schools faces growing pressure to place school resource officers in schools as soon as possible. At the same time, however, some community advocates are calling on school district officials to take their time. Now, officers haven't been stationed inside Milwaukee schools since 2016 and 20 after years of student activism. That's what I want to look at. The school's largest school district, state's largest school district, ended its contract with the police department uh, in 2020. Okay, so it's not that long. The 2023 law included a controversial requirement that the public schools place at least 25 resource officers in school. I mean, I guess I'd like to hear in the comments, do we think that from 2020 to 2023, we've got a Chicken Little situation? Or is this, I mean, are things demonstrably worse? I'm not going to pretend to claim that I know one way or the other. So far, the district is more than 8 months past the deadline that the law is set to implement the requirement. Okay. I totally think that's a big problem. Here we go again on the dismissive conduct about Gokul Gandhi. I'm guessing that John Jagler, the Republican from Watertown, is sort of related into the will, pushing for this will thing here. Again, that's an alarming thing here. We all agree that the state of Wisconsin legislature can make laws that say the Milwaukee public schools shall do X, because they have that power, and we want them to have that power for a lot of things. Like not have lead in the pipes, for example. I think people will be less concerned about that. But there are local control issues here. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. Department of Public Instruction Executive Director Sachin Cheda, and some people say the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jill Underly's campaign director, paid by the state government. Some people say that, others don't. Said in a statement to the Wisconsin Examiner Thursday that DPI has told MPS interim superintendent Eduardo Galvan the school district needs to come into compliance with state law as quickly as possible. Well, how did that work out for him? I think that's the important thing that I want to draw from that paragraph is some sternly, we've heard this from Ben Jones and other people at DPI. They're an organization that follows up sternly worded letters with more sternly worded letters. And how's that working out for them? My sense, and just it's also an opportunity there for just even if somebody wasn't interested in getting reelected or didn't or serving the people of Wisconsin or not, for doesn't it kind of seem like the Department of Public Instruction should be the ones out there? Why is Will having to do this? And assuming that DPI and MPS are on the same page, wouldn't they want to take care of it? Has it a victory for them as opposed to a victory for Will? Because that's what happened. My sense is that the previous administration, that's clearly Dr. Posley, did not take this requirement, in addition to other requirements seriously. And right. And remember, we've had this one here where the DPI and MPS did this thing where it was like, oh, shucks, it was all Posley. It wasn't us. We didn't know that there were problems. We found it out later. Remember, Jill Underly went on this tour afterwards to disclaim what we had proven for years before that, which was Deb Keither and others had been telling DPI, screaming at the top of their lungs to DPI about MPS, the stuff that was later revealed at MPS, including the mismanagement of financial stuff. And lo and behold, they just do a switcheroo, which again, we say was orchestrated by the governor's office, um, based on the information that we have, that makes it, to put all the blame on Posley, get him out the door, and then the board is still there, DPI is still there, and they can claim that they hadn't, that they can just keep going. Here we go. The previous administration, it's like they took the words right out of my mouth. The finance, okay. Due to Milwaukee Public Schools has also been under scrutiny due to its failure to submit required financial documents to the state on time. Again, we've reported here that DPI knew that and allowed it to happen. And that I think was the failure. So we can also say Milwaukee Public Schools and DPI have also been under scrutiny due to their failure to make sure that the required financial documents were submitted to the state so that they could submit the documents to the federal government. The financial issues led to the resignation of the district superintendent and its chief financial officer. Well, that's strange because the superintendent said it was a bunch of white women were saying things against him and causing problems. And the reason I can report that, just to be clear, is because that was what was reported to us by his pastor at a public meeting, as I recall. That's how we have that information. I witnessed the pastor say that. The previous administration is now gone, and both Superintendent Underly and I have spoken directly with Galvan and members of the board and MPS staff about this and strongly encourage them to work quickly to get in compliance, Cheda said. Okay. So unless there is a sentence that follows that say this is a load of like balloon juice from DPI, I'm going to have serious reservations about the rest of this article. Because we may have told the examiner too. I don't know. They may have had access to the same stuff we've had. I don't know. But one thing I will say that I do know is that statement, all of that, what had just been put in there was an exercise in creating the news on behalf of Let's Blame the Posley Coalition there. And remember, the point of that coalition isn't to say that Posley didn't have any problems. The point of that coalition is to say, pretend that it wasn't us. So then the board and Bob Peterson and all of, let's see who else we can talk about, Marva Herndon and the other presidents that have been in place can say, it wasn't us. It was somebody else. And DPI can say, it wasn't us. I wonder who else they're going to talk to. MPS officials say they've started planning to play. The problem isn't that DPI, Milwaukee Public Schools, the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, this newspaper, and other people are working together. That's not what the problem is, or creating news, or giving their opinion, or anything else. It really is that they are working against, uh, they're working for themselves and not really the children. And I think in large part they've all fooled themselves into thinking that they are representing the children, so therefore a move in their own benefit is a move for the children, as opposed to, I don't know, everybody else who hates children, which is also, I think, the same sort of mindset that the Department of Workforce Development has, is we're for, enforcing the law and workers and everything else, whatever they think. Therefore, anything attack against us is an attack. Then Ben hates workers, or Ben hates Wisconsin Fair Employment Act, or Ben enjoys making people uncomfortable, or whatever they might say. Okay. Because lo and behold, we're just going to keep looking and say MPS officials say they've started planning to place school resource officers back in schools. This includes having discussions with student groups, Milwaukee Teachers Association, administrators, staff, and the police department. This is what they're talking about. See, that's the fact that that's reported uncritically is astonishing. I mean, it's not astonishing, it's regrettable, because Wisconsin is not served by having two newspapers that each lie on behalf of different constituents. I'm just going to point that out. The truth is not helped by having just lying on behalf of somebody else. And in my point, I'm saying lying here, but this is creating a false narrative. I mean, if that's not a form of lying, you tell me. MTA President Ingrid Walker Henry told, and I'm attacking right now off the cuff some significant blue powerhouses in the Madison establishment here, and it's unfortunate. But these are their own words. MTA president told the Examiner that data showed armed officers in schools have resulted in increased suspensions, expulsions, and arrest of students. And here we go. A 2021 Center for Public Integrity report found that Wisconsin students were referred to police at twice the national rate, from 207 to 218. And in fact, this is what I came to talk about, was this report, because I think science-based, research is super important. Um, so this is what I want to talk about here. Not why the Wisconsin Examiner is is biased, but like their own words. All right, Isaiah Holmes got some good stuff that's come out of him, and they don't get me wrong. The Wisconsin Examiner sheds light on stories that other people will not do. That doesn't mean that they should print Satan Chichita's words uncritically, um, especially when it's clear he's creating a false narrative. In Wisconsin, the public school staff called the police on students at twice the national rate, from 17 to 18, according to a report by the Center of Public Integrity. And here's what's also fascinating, is I can guarantee you that almost everybody in Wisconsin believes that it's the southern states that do that, and where we don't. That is, I think Denmark's also a country that does that. It's just that I'm sure other places are equally, but it's the being racist without believing you're racist is an amazing feat. Okay. According to a report, being racist while accusing everybody else of being racist is an amazing feat. The Center put 9 students out of every 1,000 were referred to police, compared to the national rate of 4.5. The report was based on data from the U.S. Department of Education. So that's what's fascinating to me about that. Okay, right. Black children and students with disabilities, totally understand that. Get the helpless. are getting attacked when police get into schools. That's what that's saying. Black kids and disabled kids are disproportionately attacked. Even just disabled kids are disproportionately referred for law school, and I deal with that's something I'm very passionate about, and I deal with that tangentially as much as I possibly can. Disabilities on both students and adults in schools, and I think that that makes a lot of sense to me. Just 3 states, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, had higher rates of police calls by schools than the Badger states. Uh, Furthermore, the data shows that Black, Native American, Latino, and children with disabilities were most often on the receiving end of police calls during the school day. Black and disabled students were actually referred to police at nearly twice the rate of the overall student population. Meanwhile, Native American children in Wisconsin were referred to police more often than in any other state. Oh, we do have a significant Native population, and we've talked about how um, at the top of the state, the native sort of white dynamic is very similar to the native black dynamic. Sorry, black and white dynamic in the city of Milwaukee. Meanwhile, this is why, and I asked this question in the last one here. Man, we shift gears quickly on the show. But I asked this question in the last one is, do you think that police in the schools are an unqualified good? And I did that on purpose, not just knowing that this was the case, but also because um, I think that's always, Aristotle teaches us that the extremes are where we find the stress. So Native American children in Wisconsin were referred to police more often than in any other state. For indigenous children, the rate was more than 3 times higher than that of white students. A school in Lakeland led the way for referring Native American children to police in Wisconsin. Lakeland's assistant principal, Levy Massey, said the district is aware of the disparity in trying to foster a school culture that creates a greater acceptance of all schools. So that means DPI came in there, said something to him, and that's more sternly followed up by sternly worded letters. Lakeland is collaborating with UW-Madison researching on culturally responsive interventions to address these disparities. However, many of the risks within the district are widened by Lakeland's strained relationship with the Lac du Flambeau Reservation. So that's what the issue is. That there's a history there and that's where the spearfish. There's a lot in that sentence. Many of the rifts within the district are widened by Lakeland's strained relationship with the Lac du Flambeau Reservation. I'm guessing that viewers are going to know more about this than I do, especially from our more elevated neighbors to the north. I guess that's being redundant, but hey, one can do that from time to time. So, but going back to the 80s and my childhood, there was like a near hysteria for some period over the exercise, particularly in the Lac du Flambeau Reservation, over the right to spearfish. I'll leave that as it is because I'd love to do that, but I see I'm 18 minutes in. I really want everybody to, if you're interested in that, just Google it, because it's a whole thing. But that's got to be 35 more years ago. Massey noted that distrust between Lakeland and the tribe stems from a history of indigenous children in Wisconsin being placed in boarding schools, which discourage ties with their language, culture, and community. But that just contradicts what they also said. But okay, because that is another trick that we've seen. I think it was DPI. Yes, I had to do mandatory training through DPI to go to a overnight camp with my children's middle school. And in that, I learned that there were troubled problems, but with racism in Wisconsin, but none of those problems were the fault of DPI. And literally, I kid you not, one of the questions on the so-called exam was, Was DPI responsible? The answer is no. In fact, DPI is a force of good working to solve racism throughout Wisconsin. Um, what I mean, I guess my question, I'm just guessing. Here's how it works out. Because some people might say, well, does the Lac du Flambeau nation, do they have their own school system? And I guarantee you the answer is yes. I'm also going to guarantee you that the answer is that the Lakeland School District is better. That's my guarantee. Don't have any information. Speculation. Speculative guarantee void in Tennessee. And therefore, that also strains people. I mean, I told you in, Whitefish Bay, people who don't even live, just like visiting to look at the place, we give them the stink eye. So I get some of that there. I do. Now, here's my sort of rhetorical question for you all. Because when I took this DPI training, what the one thing they said was basically where in the old days they would have said, if you see something, say something. The new way to do this has got to be where this professor from UW Mass. I'm very skeptical that that's the solution. So I'm asking you all. Old days, you would see something, say something. Today, you see something, you do a bias check. Then, if you pass the bias check, D20 plus charisma, um, then thinking it wasn't charisma, I thinking it's intelligence, possibly wisdom. Um, I'm a little flippant here. You got to think these rolls out more carefully here. Um, but if that's the case, and then you make the call, and I'm sort of wondering here if you think that's the right thing to do. That is the question that we're posing here today. Is it the right thing to? What do you think about the checking and for a bias? Are you able to do that? Is that something that makes sense? Um, you know, I'm just thinking like a lot of problems in schools. If they didn't want the teachers to do it, they might just start firing people who did the thing that they didn't want them to do and set up a rule and say, just don't do it and not like have classes in place. Now, racism is an easy thing to solve. And here is a perfect example of this Lakeland and Lac du Flambeau situation that's been going on for hundreds of years here, particularly focused on this one area. So, oh, I can tell you all about that. Referrals to police occurred most often in the Sparta area school district. Okay. Sheboygan Falls, that's on the way. That's like a lot of colored people in there. Portage, okay. Disabled, that's shameful, but not unexpected. I'm guessing. Okay, I wonder if that's like it's got to be tailored per weight of student because it couldn't literally be most often because that it would have to be the city of Milwaukee, right? I mean, I guess it's the rate there. They say it. Okay, should have put rate in the sentence. Disabled students, White Lake, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Webster, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Rhinelander, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And Dodgeville, I don't know where Dodgeville is. White Lake's up there. Webster, I don't know either. And Rhinelander is that's up there. Webster, Wisconsin. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Apparently that was too much for me. All right. Well, we'll have to suspend our disbelief. Milwaukee's rate of 7.2 with 1,000 was lower than Wisconsin's over rate of 9 per 1,000, yet still higher than the national average, as was Madison's rate of 6.2 per 1,000. Now, I'm going to give you another theory that might, racialist, of course, theory that may account for this. Wisconsin, as you know, has a lot of Teutons. I'm not talking about Tutankhamun. I'm talking about people of the Germanic influence. And I'll tell you this, all the time, it just always cracks me up. Every year when I would read actively, back when I actively read the newspaper at my parents' house, you would see all the time people being arrested and charged with disorderly conduct or some variation of that. What did they do? They were sunbathing in the naked in their own closed backyard, which of course meant that somebody was actively looking in somebody else's backyard and then called the police. That's the kind of behavior that I'm talking about here that might lead to. We do that. We are officious as a state. We are officious. Um, and apparently it's having real effects on black and non-white kids and disabled kids. That's, you want to rate a culture, you rate how it treats its children. Some school districts acknowledge that work needs to be done to improve equity for minority students. I don't know what that means. Others, like Unity School District in Polk County, claim that the data inflated the numbers because law enforcement referrals can also cover social services. Okay. Although a police presence in school is sometimes praised, in worst case scenarios like school shootings, school police officers also respond to minor issues, including fights among students or what essentially amounts to temper tantrums. Now that's true. Or, or as a extension of the dean's office. That's where I don't like it. That's precisely, we're getting now to the rubber hits, Ben Hitchcock Cross personally feels that, and we've seen that in the Whitefish Bay case, among others, where the allegation there is Amy Levick, the principal, there's using the police powers, is commanding the police department as if they're an extension of her office, which is inappropriate, possibly illegal. Many schools, particularly high schools, also have school resource officers with office in the building. Students in some schools have to pass through metal detectors to enter school buildings. In Wisconsin, that like 20, wow, be subject to canine searches throughout the year. Officers may also employ, okay, where students inform on their peers for pay. Eagle River, Wisconsin. A school in northern Wisconsin will be starting the Quick 50 program next school year. Oh my God. This is why we plan these things out ahead, ladies and gentlemen. The program would give a student that reports a legitimate tip or threat $50. I don't think. I just, school discipline is different than criminal discipline. Because the purpose of school discipline is to teach, and the purpose of criminal discipline is to deter. The program gives $50. The person calling in the tip can remain anonymous, but the tip must lead to an arrest. Other schools around the state have been doing it for years. Eric Neff's approach to his job is simple. For the last 2 years, the school resource officer has worked to strengthen his relationship with students as a way to bribe them. Why don't they give them quotas? Why don't you give every student, you can't get you give them extra credit, or only way they can get an A plus is if they tell on one of their students. Why don't you do that? It's an environment where I pretty know 90% of the population here. But they're not giving me enough information. So I'm going to use cash as a way to incentivize children to tell on each other. What in the I'm We really want to stress that if you see something, say something. No bias check there. Superintendent Mike Ritchie told us the program called Quick 50 would give the students that reports a legitimate tip $50. Redundant. The person calling the tip can be redundant, but the tip is like a redundant. It can involve a student has a weapon in their locker. They have some drugs in a backpack. They have something that's illegal. Ritchie said Ritchie worked with the program during his time in the New London. It's been very successful there in other parts of the state. We're giving students and kids a voice, an anonymous voice to speak out and say something. And we're incentivizing to do that with cash money. Where did they come up with $50? Program? It just seems unlikely. They average between 5 and 25 quick 50 rewards per school year. 15. It's not the person that's really in crisis that's going to have the voice. It's the snitches next to them that are seeing this, and they are the snitches that are reaching out through this technology, explained Officer Sullivan. And Eagle River, Eric Neff hopes the snitches he built relationships with continue reaching out and being proactive. I would rather give a snitch $50 than have a problem that I wasn't able to stop even before it happened, Neff said. Superintendent Ritchie said he's confident that the school will fund the snitch program through its own budget. Wow. I'm done. It's the end of the month. You better have your quotas in, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for sticking with it. I'm quick 50. There's nothing about that I like. Let's remember the testimony, everybody who watched the YSL trial, about how those kids were getting bribed and charged and intimidated and threatened by the police in middle school. That's called a pipeline. I don't go for that. I really don't. All right. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll keep you informed.